The sound of flesh striking fur echoed through the concrete corridor. Axel, a three-legged German shepherd with battle-worn eyes, didn't yelp or growl when Tyler Jamison's open palm connected with his muzzle. The dog's military training had taught him to endure pain in silence. "Worthless mutt," Tyler hissed, his voice low enough that the security cameras wouldn't catch his words. What happened next left everyone at Sunrise Haven Animal Shelter speechless. Instead of retreating or attacking, Axel dropped to his belly, crawled forward on his remaining 3 legs, and gently placed his graying muzzle against Tyler's boot. The German shepherd's amber eyes, once sharp with battlefield awareness, looked up with an unmistakable plea for forgiveness. Tyler stepped back, visibly shaken. "What the hell?" Sarah Wellington, watching from the doorway, gasped. This wasn't just unusual behavior. This was something she'd never seen in 30 years of animal rescue. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. The Arizona summer heat pressed down on Sunrise Haven Animal Shelter like a heavy blanket. The air conditioning struggling against the 105-degree temperature outside. Located on the outskirts of Phoenix, the facility had once been a county detention center before being repurposed 5 years ago. Concrete walls now painted in cheerful colors that couldn't quite mask their institutional origin. Axel hadn't always been known as the three-legged German shepherd in Kennel 17. Born on a military breeding facility in San Antonio, he'd been selected for the elite K9 Corps at just 8 weeks old, when his alertness and drive stood out among his littermates. By age 2, he'd completed extensive training in explosive detection and graduated top of his class. His military tattoo, a small serial number inside his right ear, was now faded but still visible beneath his fur K9-5479 SOC. For 5 years, Axel had served alongside his handler, Sergeant James Miller, completing 3 tours in Afghanistan. His record included 16 confirmed explosive detections that had saved countless lives. There was even a commendation letter from a general after Axel had found a sophisticated IED hidden near a school in Kandahar. The same courage that earned him medals had cost him his left front leg during his final mission, a sacrifice that apparently wasn't enough to secure his future once he could no longer serve. Tyler Jamison had been working at Sunrise Haven for just under a year. At 32, his face carried the permanent tan of someone who'd spent his youth in the Arizona sun, though the smile lines around his eyes had faded since receiving news of his brother's death 3 years ago. To the other staff, he was quiet, efficient, and seemed to genuinely care for most of the animals except, it appeared, for this particular German shepherd. Sarah Wellington ran the shelter with the precision she'd learned during her 15 years as an Army nurse. At 45, her auburn hair now threaded with silver, she enforced the shelter's policies with both compassion and pragmatism. The hardest of these was the 30-day rule. Animals with behavioral issues that weren't resolved or adopted within a month would be evaluated for euthanasia, a necessary evil given their limited resources. Dr. Elaine Morse, the shelter's veterinarian, had already noted concerns about Axel's psychological state in his intake forms. Classic signs of abandonment trauma, she'd written. Possible PTSD, requires experienced handler. What none of them yet knew was how Axel's arrival would change all their lives, especially Tyler's. Axel arrived at Sunrise Haven on a Tuesday morning, transported in a government-issue crate with paperwork that told only half his story. The official transfer documents listed him as Military Working Dog K9 5479, medically retired, unsuitable for continued service or civilian law enforcement placement. What the sterile bureaucratic language failed to convey was the valor behind his discharge. Sarah signed for the delivery, frowning at the German shepherd's condition. His coat was dull, ribs visible beneath his tan and black fur. The stump where his left front leg had been was properly healed but pink with irritation from neglect. When she opened the crate door, Axel remained inside, pressing himself against the back wall. "Hey there, boy," she said softly. "You're safe now." The dog's amber eyes assessed her with an intelligence that seemed almost human, but he made no move to exit the crate. Dr. Morse arrived with a slip leash. "Let's get him to the exam room. Minimal handling until we know his temperament." They managed to coax Axel out and down the hallway, his three-legged gait surprisingly nimble despite his weakened condition. In the exam room, he stood perfectly still during his examination, responding to basic commands with military precision, even without verbal rewards. "Remarkable training," Dr. Morse murmured, running her hands over his scarred body. "But he's at least 15 pounds underweight. And look at his paws' cracked pads, untrimmed nails. Someone's been neglecting him since his injury." As Dr. B. Morse continued her examination, Axel's mind drifted to another place, another time. The Afghan sun beat down mercilessly, making the tactical vest feel twice as heavy against his fur. Sergeant Miller's familiar scent gun oil, coffee, and that strange mint stuff he chewed kept Axel focused as they moved through the village. His nose worked constantly, filtering hundreds of smells, cooking food, human waste, livestock, dust, then different. Something chemical beneath the normal village odors. Axel froze, his training kicking in automatically. He sat, staring intently at a pile of rubble near a low wall. "What you got, boy?" Miller whispered, following protocol exactly as they'd trained. Axel remained motionless, his eyes locked on the target. The smell was stronger now. Fertilizer, wires, something metallic. His ears registered Miller calling in the find, the other soldiers creating a perimeter. The explosion wasn't supposed to happen. Later, he would learn that the IED had been rigged with a secondary trigger. All he knew in that moment was Miller's shout, the sudden push sending him flying, and then pain, white-hot and all-consuming, as something tore through his left front leg. "He's dissociating." Dr. Morse's voice pulled Sarah back to the present. Classic PTSD response. "My brother-in-law came back from Iraq the same way. Goes somewhere else in his mind." Sarah nodded, making notes in Axel's file. Recommendation: quiet kennel, minimal stimulation to start, regular feeding schedule, no sudden movements or loud noises, and will need someone patient to work with him daily, someone with experience handling traumatized animals. Sarah considered her staff roster. "I'll put Tyler on this. He did great with that abused pit bull last month." Dr. Morse finished her examination, administering vaccines and drawing blood for testing. Throughout it all, Axel remained stoic, flinching only when the needle entered his skin. "Good boy," Dr. Morse said, offering a treat that Axel politely declined. "Interesting. Not food-motivated. Military dogs often aren't," Sarah explained. "They're trained to work for praise and toys instead." They settled Axel into Kennel 17 at the quiet end of the dog wing. Sarah placed his paperwork in the staff room and called a brief meeting to discuss the new arrival. "We have a former military working dog," she announced to the assembled staff. "German Shepherd, triple amputee, three-legged," Dr. Morse corrected gently. "Let's not define him by what's missing." Sarah nodded. "Three-legged German Shepherd, retired from service, shows signs of neglect and psychological trauma. Tyler, I'd like you to take primary responsibility for his care." Tyler's face remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. "Military dog." "Yes, served in Afghanistan. His name is Axel." Tyler hesitated just a fraction too long before responding. "Sure. I can handle him." Later that afternoon, Tyler approached Kennel 17 with forced casualness. Axel lay on his thin, shelter-issued bed, head up and alert, watching Tyler's every movement. "So you're a war hero, huh?" Tyler said, his voice neutral as he unlatched the kennel door. "Let's see what you're made of." He entered the kennel too quickly for a dog with Axel's history. The German Shepherd scrambled to his feet, backing into the corner as Tyler advanced with a leash. "Come on. It's just a damn leash," Tyler muttered, reaching for Axel's collar. What happened next was pure instinct. Cornered, triggered by the sudden movement, Axel's training failed him. His lips pulled back. A low growl rumbled in his chest, and when Tyler's hand came too close, Axel's teeth made contact with skin. It wasn't a serious bite, more warning than attack, barely breaking the skin on Tyler's forearm. But it was enough. Tyler jerked back, clutching his arm, a storm of emotions crossing his face. "Son of a bitch!" Outside the kennel, he examined the small puncture wounds, memory flashing to another time, another wound, his brother's deployment photo, that stupid grin beneath his helmet, the telegram that came 6 months later, the closed casket at Arlington. Something hardened in Tyler's eyes as he looked back at the German Shepherd, who had already retreated to his bed. Head low in what appeared to be remorse. "Failed to protect my brother. And now you bite me," he whispered, too low for anyone else to hear. "You've made a big mistake, hero." He bandaged his arm in the staff bathroom, downplaying the incident when Sarah inquired about it later. "Just a misunderstanding," Tyler said, forcing a smile. "He was scared. I moved too fast. My fault. Really." Sarah studied him carefully. "Should I assign him to someone else?" "No." Tyler answered quickly. "We've established a relationship now. Switching handlers would just confuse him more. I know how to handle him." Sarah nodded, relieved. "Good. He needs consistency. The 30-day clock starts today, standard evaluation period." 30 days, Tyler repeated, something dark passing behind his eyes. More than enough time. What Sarah couldn't see was the decision forming in Tyler's mind. Axel wouldn't be leaving Sunrise Haven alive. The morning after the biting incident, Tyler arrived at Sunrise Haven 30 minutes before his shift. The shelter was quiet, with only the night attendant dozing at the front desk. Tyler moved through the kennel area with practiced efficiency, checking on each animal while working his way toward Kennel 17. Axel was awake, sitting at attention as though he'd been expecting Tyler's arrival. The German shepherd's posture remained military straight despite his missing limb, a habit ingrained through years of service. His amber eyes tracked Tyler's movements, alert but not aggressive. "Morning, mutt," Tyler said coldly, unlatching the kennel door. "Time for your breakfast." He placed the measured cup of kibble in Axel's bowl, but kept the water pitcher at his side. As Axel cautiously approached the food, Tyler noticed something he'd missed before: a faded tattoo inside the dog's right ear, partially visible when Axel turned his head. It wasn't just the standard military identification number. There was a unit insignia. Tyler froze, recognizing the stylized dagger and lightning bolt, the same insignia that had adorned his brother's uniform, the same unit patch that had been folded inside the flag-draped coffin. 75th Ranger Regiment, Tyler whispered, memories cascading through him like a landslide. 3 years earlier, Tyler had been restocking shelves at his father's hardware store when the 2 uniformed officers appeared at the entrance. He knew, even before they removed their caps, even before they asked for the family of Staff Sergeant Kevin Jameson. His brother had deployed 6 months earlier. His 3rd tour. "Last one," Kevin had promised. "Then I'm out. Maybe go to college on the Bill." The officers spoke in solemn, practiced tones about an IED, about Kevin's heroic actions saving 3 squad members, about grateful nations and ultimate sacrifices. But one detail lodged in Tyler's mind like shrapnel. The explosive should have been detected by the unit's K9 team. The dog had missed it. The senior officer explained, a rare but devastating failure. Now, staring at the unit insignia in Axel's ear, Tyler felt rage bubbling up from a place he thought he'd sealed off. Could this be the same dog, the one who failed to save Kevin? "Was it you?" Tyler hissed, causing Axel to back away from his untouched food. "Were you the one who missed it?" Logically, Tyler knew the chances were astronomical. There were multiple K9 teams in the regiment, but in that moment, logic surrendered to grief. In Axel, Tyler saw not just any military dog, but a symbol of the system that had taken his brother and sent back only a folded flag and empty condolences. He picked up the water bowl, dumping its contents down the drain at the back of the kennel. "Thirsty? Too bad. Maybe tomorrow, if you behave." Tyler's voice remained eerily calm, at odds with the storm in his eyes. "Let's see how a hero like you handles a little discomfort." Axel watched the water disappear, confusion evident in his expression. In his military life, resources had never been withheld as punishment. The dog took a tentative step toward Tyler, his posture submissive, head lowered. "Stay back," Tyler warned. Raising his hand, Axel immediately froze, recognizing the threat of physical correction. After Tyler left, Axel remained standing for several minutes, staring at the empty water bowl. His military training had taught him to endure discomfort without complaint, to trust his handlers implicitly. This new situation violated everything he understood about human canine partnerships. Throughout the day, Tyler maintained a facade of professional care whenever other staff members were present. He walked Axel briefly in the exercise yard, administered prescribed medications, and even made a show of speaking encouragingly to the dog when Doctors Morse passed by. But when they were alone, Tyler's true intentions emerged. "Food report for Axel," Tyler told Sarah that afternoon, handing her a clipboard. He's refusing to eat. Might be stress from the new environment. Sarah frowned. That's concerning. Did he drink his water at least? Knocked it over twice. Tyler lied, smoothly. I've been refilling it, but he seems agitated. By the third day, Axel's condition was noticeably deteriorating. His coat, already dull upon arrival, had lost more luster. During the morning rounds, Dr. Morse expressed concern. He's showing signs of dehydration, she noted, pinching the skin at Axel's neck and watching it slowly return to position. And he's lost another pound since intake. Are you sure he's getting his full rations? I measure it myself, Tyler assured her. Maybe we should try a different food. Some dogs are picky. Military dogs are trained to eat what's provided, Dr. Morse said, her brow furrowed in suspicion. But I'll prescribe some appetite stimulants just in case. Tyler nodded, accepting the prescription while mentally calculating how easy it would be to accidentally drop those pills down the drain. That evening, after most staff had left, Tyler entered Axel's kennel with the clipboard. The German shepherd was lying on his bed, but rose immediately when Tyler appeared, a perfect military response despite his weakened state. Look at you. Still playing soldier, Tyler muttered. My brother loved the military, too. Fat lot of good it did him. To Tyler's surprise, Axel approached him cautiously, then lowered himself to the ground in a gesture of complete submission. The dog inched forward on his belly, eventually reaching Tyler's boots. There. Axel did something extraordinary. He placed his muzzle gently on Tyler's shoe and looked up with an expression that could only be described as pleading. The gesture momentarily shook Tyler's resolve. This wasn't aggression or even fear. This was something he'd never seen from an animal before. It almost looked like apology. Doesn't matter, Tyler said, more to himself than to Axel. You're just an animal. You don't understand anything. He made a notation on the clipboard. Subject continues to display aggressive body language and food guarding. Attempted to bite during evening medication. 25 days remained in Axel's evaluation period. 25 days for Tyler to build a case for euthanasia. 25 days to avenge a brother who would never come home. The following morning, Sarah called Tyler into her office. Her expression was neutral, but her tone suggested concern. I'm looking at Axel's chart, she said, tapping a finger on the report Tyler had submitted. These behavioral notes don't match what I've observed. Yesterday afternoon, I saw you walk him. He was perfectly responsive to commands. Tyler shifted uncomfortably. He's unpredictable. Fine 1 minute, aggressive the next. Classic PTSD. Sarah studied him carefully. Tyler, is there something about this particular dog that's bothering you? I can reassign him if needed. No, Tyler answered too quickly. I mean, he's challenging, but I'm making progress. It would set him back to change handlers now. All right, Sarah conceded. But I'd like Dr. Morse to observe your interactions with him tomorrow. Standard procedure for difficult cases. Tyler nodded, forcing a smile. Of course. Whatever helps him adjust. As he left Sarah's office, Tyler's mind raced. He needed to be more subtle, more strategic. He couldn't risk losing access to Axel, not when the dog had become the focus of all his buried rage and grief. That night, Axel lay in his kennel, stomach cramping from dehydration and hunger. Yet when he heard footsteps approaching Tyler's distinctive gait, his tail thumped weakly against the concrete floor. Despite everything, the German shepherd's training to trust his handler remained intact, a testament to both his resilience and his vulnerability. The countdown continued, 24 days remaining. The morning sun filtered through the high windows of the shelter, casting long rectangles of light across the concrete floor. In Kennel 17, Axel lifted his head at the sound of approaching footsteps, lighter than Tyler's, accompanied by the soft squeak of rubber-soled shoes. Dr. Morse appeared at his door, clipboard in hand, her gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun. "Good morning, handsome," she said softly, observing him with professional concern. Axel rose to his feet, a gesture that took more effort than it should have. His military training automatically kicked in, spine straight, head up, eyes forward, stand for inspection. Even as his body weakened, his discipline remained unbreakable. Dr. Morse made notes, frowning at what she saw. "You're a good soldier, aren't you? But something's not right here." She entered the kennel carefully, moving slowly to avoid startling him. Axel remained perfectly still as she checked his gums, pale and dry, and felt his ribs, now more prominent than they had been at intake. "Who's not taking care of you?" "Boy," she murmured, more to herself than to the dog. From Axel's perspective, the woman's gentle hands were a stark contrast to Tyler's rough handling. Her touch reminded him of the medic who had tended his wounds after the explosion, back when his world still made sense, before everything changed. In Afghanistan, Axel had understood his purpose: find the bombs, protect the unit, obey the handler. Simple directives that organized his existence. The explosion had shattered that certainty, replacing it with pain and confusion. Then came the sterile rooms, the surgeries, the rehabilitation with strangers who spoke to him with artificial cheerfulness, but lacked the bond he'd shared with Sergeant Miller. "We'll get you some fluids," Dr. Morse was saying, preparing a subcutaneous injection. "This will help until we figure out what's going on." Axel accepted the needle without complaint, the slight discomfort meaningless compared to what he'd endured. As the doctor worked, his mind drifted back to his final days with the unit. Sergeant Miller had visited him in recovery, still bandaged himself from the same explosion. "You did good, boy," he'd said, voice thick with emotion. "Real good." That was the last time Axel had seen him. Later came strangers in uniforms, discussing his retirement options in low voices they thought he couldn't understand. Words like liability and unfit for placement and difficult decisions. "All done," Dr. Morse said, bringing Axel back to the present. She offered him a treat, a small piece of cheese which he gently accepted, his first food in nearly 24 hours. That's it. Small steps. Across the shelter, Tyler Jamison was cleaning kennels, his movements mechanical as his mind churned with memories and justifications. The image of his brother's flag-draped coffin kept superimposing itself over everything he did. Kevin had been the Golden Boy high school quarterback, community volunteer, decorated soldier. Tyler had spent his life in that long shadow, never quite measuring up. "Hey, Tyler," Sarah called from the front desk. "Can you show a visitor around potential adopter?" Tyler straightened, plastering on his professional smile. "Sure thing." The man waiting in the lobby stood with military bearing despite his civilian-clothes jeans, flannel shirt, work boots, mid-30s. Tyler guessed, with the hypervigilant gaze of someone accustomed to scanning for threats. A faded scar ran from his right temple down his cheek. "This is Robert Patterson," Sarah introduced them. "Goes by Bobby. He's looking for a companion animal." "Nice to meet you," Tyler said automatically, extending his hand. Bobby's handshake was firm but brief, minimizing physical contact. "Likewise." "I'm specifically interested in adult dogs. Not really a puppy person. We've got several great adult dogs." Tyler began his standard tour speech. "Any particular breed you're interested in? I was thinking a German Shepherd, maybe, or a Belgian Malinois." Tyler's pace faltered slightly. "Military." Bobby nodded. "Marines? 2 tours. My brother was Army, 75th Ranger Regiment." The words came out before Tyler could stop them. "Good outfit," Bobby said simply. "He's still in KIA, Afghanistan. 3 years ago." Bobby's expression showed understanding rather than pity, the response of someone who'd lost friends the same way. "I'm sorry to hear that. Too many good men never made it home." As they walked through the adoption area, Tyler pointed out various dogs, deliberately avoiding the section where Axel was housed. Bobby interacted politely with each animal, but seemed distracted, as if searching for something specific. "You have any military working dogs?" Bobby finally asked. "I heard some shelters get them after they're retired." Tyler's shoulders tensed. "Why would you want one of those?" Bobby looked surprised at Tyler's tone. "They're exceptional animals, well-trained, disciplined." He hesitated, then added more quietly, "And I figure they deserve a good retirement after what they've been through." "Same as any veteran. We had one," Tyler admitted reluctantly. "German Shepherd. But he's not available for adoption. Behavioral issues. Aggressive." Sarah, who had just approached with some paperwork, frowned at Tyler's characterization. "Are you talking about Axel?" "He's still under evaluation, but I wouldn't call him aggressive, traumatized." "Certainly." Bobby's interest visibly increased. "Axel. Was he in Afghanistan?" "Yes," Sarah confirmed. "Missing his left front leg. He's only been with us a week." "Could I see him?" Bobby asked, an urgency in his voice that hadn't been there before. Tyler stepped in quickly. "He's under medical observation right now, not available for viewing." "Actually," Dr. Morse interrupted, approaching from the treatment area, "I've just finished with him. He's back in his kennel if you'd like to see him." Tyler clenched his jaw but remained silent as they all walked toward Kennel 17. With each step, he felt his carefully constructed plan unraveling. If this ex-Marine took an interest in Axel, Tyler's opportunity for revenge might disappear. When they reached Axel's kennel, Bobby stopped abruptly, his breathing changing. The German Shepherd was lying on his bed but rose immediately, ears forward, posture alert despite his obvious weakness. "My God," Bobby whispered. "He looks just like—" Something passed between the man and the dog, a moment of recognition that transcended explanation. Axel's tail, which had barely moved in days, gave a tentative wag. "Can I go in?" Bobby asked. "Doctor—" Morse looked to Sarah, who nodded approval. "Just move slowly. He's been through a lot." Bobby entered the kennel with the careful movements of someone accustomed to approaching trauma victims. He didn't look directly at Axel, but sat on the floor, making himself smaller, less threatening. "Hey there, buddy," he said softly. "Been a rough road, hasn't it?" Axel studied the stranger, nostrils flaring as he processed Bobby's scent. There was something familiar there. Gun oil, desert dust, the metallic tang of blood, smells from before, from home. Slowly, cautiously, Axel approached. Bobby remained perfectly still, allowing the dog to investigate on his own terms. When Axel finally sniffed his outstretched hand, Bobby exhaled as if he'd been holding his breath. "That's it," he murmured. "Nice and easy." To everyone's surprise, Axel moved closer, pressing his body against Bobby's leg, then lowered his head to rest on the man's knee, a gesture of profound trust. "Well, I'll be damned," Dr. Morse said quietly. "I haven't seen him do that with anyone." Tyler watched the interaction with mounting unease. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Axel was meant to remain unadopted, his behavior deteriorating until euthanasia became the only option. Now this stranger was threatening to disrupt everything. "He still has a long evaluation period," Tyler said, his voice sharper than intended. "We can't be sure he's safe for adoption." Bobby looked up, his hand resting gently on Axel's head. "What happened to him? Do you have his service record?" Sarah hesitated. "We only received basic transfer documents. They don't include much detail about his military service." "I'd like to apply to adopt him," Bobby said firmly. "Once he's cleared your evaluation, of course." "That's a minimum of 23 more days," Tyler pointed out, "and there's no guarantee he'll pass." Bobby studied Tyler with the assessing gaze of someone used to identifying threats. "I'm willing to wait. I can visit him daily, help with his rehabilitation." "That's very generous," Sarah said, "but unusual. Most adopters prefer a dog they can take home immediately." Bobby stroked Axel's fur gently, the dog leaning into his touch. "I'm not most adopters, and he's not most dogs." After Bobby left with adoption paperwork and a promise to return the next day, Sarah called Tyler and Dr. Morse into her office. Her expression was troubled as she closed the door behind them. "I'm concerned about Axel's condition," she began without preamble. "Dr. Morse tells me he's showing signs of neglect." Tyler kept his face neutral. "I've been following all protocols. As I reported, he's been refusing food and water." "That's the thing," Dr. de Morse interjected. "Dogs don't typically refuse water to the point of dehydration unless there's a serious medical issue, and I found no physical cause for his deterioration." Sarah turned her full attention to Tyler. "You've been spending the most time with him. Have you noticed anything unusual? Any reason he might be declining so rapidly?" Tyler felt sweat forming at his hairline. "Military dogs are different. They have psychological issues civilians can't understand." "My concern," Sarah continued carefully, "is that his condition doesn't match your reports. According to your notes, he's been aggressive and difficult to handle. But what we all just witnessed with Mr. Patterson suggests otherwise. One good interaction doesn't erase a pattern of behavior, Tyler argued. He bit me. Remember, a nip, Dr. Morse corrected, barely broke the skin. And given his history, not surprising if he was cornered or startled. Sarah sighed, rubbing her temples. Look, I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but from now on, I want daily photographic documentation of Axel's food and water intake, and we'll rotate staff for his evening care. Tyler felt panic rising in his chest. That's not necessary. Changing handlers will just confuse him more. It's standard procedure for high-need cases, Sarah insisted. And I want you to work with Bobby Patterson when he visits. His military background might help us understand Axel better. Tyler nodded stiffly, mind racing to salvage his plan. Whatever you think is best. That night, after everyone had left, except the overnight attendant, Tyler slipped back into the shelter. He had the weekend shift rotation memorized and knew tonight's attendant, Mark, would be dozing in the break room by now, the security cameras recording but unwatched. Axel was asleep when Tyler reached his kennel, but woke immediately, rising to his feet with that same military precision despite his weakened state. "Got yourself a friend, huh?" Tyler whispered, unlocking the kennel door. "Think you're going to get a happy ending?" To his surprise, Axel's tail gave that same tentative wag he'd shown Bobby. As if, despite everything, the dog still hoped for connection, still believed handlers were fundamentally good. The innocent response triggered something dark in Tyler. My brother believed in the system, too. Trusted his life to dogs like you. In the dim emergency lighting, Tyler studied the German Shepherd thinner now, ribs clearly visible, but still dignified, still a soldier. The sight of Axel standing at attention, compensating perfectly for his missing limb, made Tyler think of Kevin's ROTC graduation, how proud their father had been. "Sit," Tyler commanded suddenly. Axel immediately complied, the automatic response of a well-trained military dog. Down. Again. Instant obedience. "Roll over." Axel hesitated, the command requiring him to expose his vulnerable belly, an act of submission that went against self-preservation instinct, especially given Tyler's recent treatment. "I said, roll over," Tyler repeated more forcefully. Slowly, Axel lowered himself to his side, then with awkward dignity, rolled onto his back, 3 legs in the air, the scarred stump of his fourth exposed. Completely vulnerable. Tyler stared at the dog's trusting compliance, and something cracked inside him. This wasn't a vicious animal. This was a soldier following orders, even when those orders came from someone who had shown nothing but cruelty, just like Kevin, following orders even when it cost him everything. For a brief, disorienting moment, Tyler saw his brother's face superimposed over the German Shepherd's features, both loyal to a fault, both sacrificed by a system that used them up and discarded them. "Stop looking at me like that," Tyler whispered, his voice breaking. But Axel continued to hold position, waiting for the release command that would allow him to move. His amber eyes reflected neither fear nor anger, only patient endurance. Tyler stepped back, suddenly nauseated. What was he doing? This wasn't justice for Kevin. This was becoming the very thing he hated: someone who abused power, who hurt the vulnerable. "Release," he finally said, the command shaky on his lips. Axel rolled back to his feet, watching Tyler expectantly, waiting for the next command, still trusting, still hoping. Tyler left the kennel without another word, locking it behind him. In the empty corridor, he leaned against the wall, breath coming in short gasps as the magnitude of his actions hit him. He'd been systematically torturing an animal, a wounded veteran, out of misplaced vengeance. What would Kevin think of him now? The next morning, Bobby Patterson arrived promptly at opening time, a canvas bag slung over his shoulder. Sarah greeted him warmly. "You're our first visitor today. Eager to see Axel." Bobby nodded, his expression serious. "I did some research last night. Military working dogs with Axel's unit number would have been with the Rangers, elite teams." Sarah led him toward the kennels. "We don't know much about his service, just that he was injured and then discharged." "Military dogs don't just get discharged for injuries," Bobby said, a note of anger in his voice. "Not if they have a bond with their handler." Something else happened. They found Tyler already at Axel's kennel, replacing water and food bowls. His movements were mechanical, his expression unreadable. Axel stood at attention, watching Tyler's every move with cautious optimism. "Morning," Bobby greeted him. "How's he doing today?" Tyler straightened, avoiding eye contact. "Better. He drank some water overnight." Bobby studied the German Shepherd carefully, noting his prominent ribs and dull coat. "Has he always been this thin?" "He came to us underweight," Sarah explained. "We're working on building him back up." Bobby knelt by the kennel door. "Hey, Axel. Remember me." The dog's reaction was immediate: ears perking, tail wagging, body language shifting from military precision to genuine enthusiasm. He moved to the front of the kennel, pressing his nose against the chain link separating him from Bobby. "Can I go in?" Bobby asked. Sarah unlocked the door, and Bobby entered with the same careful movements as before. This time, Axel approached immediately, sniffing Bobby intently, his tail wagging with increasing confidence. "I brought you something," Bobby said, reaching into his canvas bag. He pulled out a well-worn camouflage bandana. "Thought you might like something that smells familiar." He held out the bandana for Axel to investigate. The German Shepherd's reaction was extraordinary. He inhaled deeply, then pressed his entire body against Bobby's legs, making a soft, whining sound unlike anything they'd heard from him before. "Where did you serve?" Tyler asked suddenly, watching the interaction with growing unease. "Helmand Province, mostly," Bobby replied, his attention still on Axel. "Near the Pakistan border." "Same region as my brother," Tyler said. "Were you ever around the K9 units?" Bobby looked up, something flickering in his eyes. "Sometimes. Why?" "Just curious," Tyler said. But his mind was racing. The coincidence seemed too great: Bobby's specific interest in Axel, his knowledge of military working dogs, his service in the same region where Kevin had died. Sarah interrupted his thoughts. "Tyler, can you help Bobby fill out the adoption interest forms? I need to check on a new arrival." Reluctantly. Tyler led Bobby to the small interview room used for adoption paperwork. As they sat across from each other at the metal table, the tension between them was palpable. "You seem to have a problem with me adopting Axel," Bobby said finally, his tone conversational but his eyes sharp. Tyler pushed the clipboard of forms across the table. "I just want to make sure he goes to the right home, if he goes anywhere at all. Meaning he has behavioral issues that might make him unsuitable for adoption." Bobby leaned back, studying Tyler. "Funny thing, I've worked with a lot of military dogs. I know their training, their behaviors, and what I see in Axel isn't aggression, it's trauma, and possibly neglect." Tyler felt his face flush. "Are you accusing me of something?" "I'm making an observation," Bobby replied calmly. "That dog has been mistreated recently, not just in his military past, but here, now." "You don't know what you're talking about," Tyler snapped, rising from his chair. "Fill out the forms if you want, but Axel still has 23 days of evaluation. A lot can happen in that time." As Tyler stormed out of the interview room, he didn't notice Dr. Morse standing in the hallway, having overheard the entire exchange. Her expression was troubled as she watched him go, the pieces of a disturbing puzzle beginning to fit together in her mind. Side. Kennel 17. Axel lay on his bed, the camouflage bandana Bobby had left with him carefully positioned between his paws. For the first time since arriving at Sunrise Haven, the constant vigilance in his posture had relaxed slightly. The familiar scent of the bandana had triggered something in him, not just memory, but hope. 23 days remained in his evaluation period. 23 days that would change everything for Axel, for Bobby, and for Tyler Jamison. 3 days after Bobby Patterson's first visit, Sarah Wellington called an emergency staff meeting before the shelter opened. Her expression was grave as she addressed the small team gathered in the break room, the morning sunlight casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. "We have a situation with one of our animals," she began, her voice measured but tense. "Security footage from the past week shows concerning inconsistencies in care." Dr. Morse stood beside her, arms folded across her chest. "I've been monitoring Axel's condition since intake. His deterioration doesn't align with his medical profile or reported behavior." Tyler sat rigidly in his chair, fingers gripping his coffee mug so tightly his knuckles had turned white. The room seemed to shrink around him, the air growing thin. He'd been careful, or so he thought. The security cameras in the kennel area were ancient, with blind spots he'd mapped out during his first month of employment. "What kind of inconsistencies?" asked Emma. "One of the weekend volunteers." Sarah clicked a remote, and the small television in the corner flickered to life. Grainy footage showed Tyler entering Axel's kennel after hours, removing water bowls, returning with empty food dishes that should have been full. "The timestamps on these visits don't match any scheduled care times," Sarah continued, her voice hardening. "And they directly contradict written reports claiming Axel refused food and water." All eyes turned to Tyler, who struggled to maintain his composure. "Those cameras malfunction all the time," he said, his voice strained. "The timestamps are probably wrong." "I checked the system myself," Sarah countered. "Multiple angles, multiple nights. This isn't a malfunction." "Tyler," Dr. Morse stepped forward. "Axel came to us with post-traumatic stress. Yes, but physically stable. In 1 week under your primary care, he lost nearly 10% of his body weight and developed moderate dehydration. That doesn't happen by accident. Tyler stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You don't understand. Those dogs, military dogs, they're not what you think they are. Then explain it to us, Sarah said, her tone softening slightly. Help us understand what's going on. The words caught in Tyler's throat. How could he explain the rage that had consumed him since Kevin's death? The need to blame something, someone, for the senseless loss. How a German shepherd with a ranger tattoo had become the perfect target for all his unprocessed grief. My brother, he began, then stopped, the familiar pressure building behind his eyes. He was killed in Afghanistan. The report said a military dog missed an IED. The handler survived. My brother didn't. Understanding dawned on Sarah's face. And Axel's unit insignia, you thought he was that dog. I don't know, Tyler admitted, his voice barely audible. I just needed someone to pay. The room fell silent, the other staff members exchanging uncomfortable glances. Even in his shame, Tyler recognized the mix of pity and disgust on their faces. I need your keys and ID badge, Sarah finally said. You're suspended pending a full investigation. The board will determine whether this warrants termination or legal action. Tyler surrendered his credentials without protest, the reality of his actions finally breaking through the fog of justification he'd built around himself. As he walked toward the exit, Dr. Morse's voice stopped him. For what it's worth, she said quietly, Axel couldn't have been the dog from your brother's unit. His service record shows he was nowhere near that region during the time your brother was killed. The information hit Tyler like a physical blow. All this time, all this hatred directed at an innocent animal who had suffered his own trauma, lost his own comrades. He left the shelter without another word, the morning sun harsh against his face, illuminating everything he'd tried to keep hidden in darkness. Inside the shelter, Bobby Patterson arrived for his daily visit with Axel, unaware of the morning's drama. Sarah met him at the front desk, her expression carefully neutral. Mr. Patterson, before you see Axel today, there's something you should know. She led him to her office, explaining the situation in professional terms. Care protocols had been breached. The staff member responsible had been removed. Axel was receiving proper treatment now. Bobby listened intently, his jaw tightening with each revelation. I knew something was wrong, he said when she finished. Military dogs don't break that easily. They're trained to endure far worse conditions than a shelter environment. Sarah studied him curiously. You seem to know a lot about military working dogs. Were you a handler? Bobby hesitated, then shook his head. No, but I worked closely with K9 units during my second tour. They saved our lives more times than I can count. Something in his tone made Sarah suspect there was more to the story. But she didn't press. Well, Axel is responding well to treatment. Dr. Morse has him on a special diet to regain weight, and we've assigned our most experienced staff to his care. I'd still like to adopt him, Bobby said firmly. When he's cleared, of course. Of course. In fact, Dr. Morse suggested your visits continue. He responds to you in a way we haven't seen with anyone else." They walked together to Kennel 17, where Dr. Palm Morse was already checking Axel's vital signs. The German Shepherd looked marginally better than he had days earlier, more alert. His eyes brighter, though still dangerously thin. "Here's your friend," Dr. Morse told Axel as Bobby approached the kennel. The transformation in the dog was immediate and profound. His ears perked forward, tail wagging with unmistakable recognition. When Bobby entered the kennel, Axel pressed against him with such enthusiasm he nearly lost his balance on his 3 legs. "Hey, buddy," Bobby murmured, kneeling to embrace the dog. "Looking better today." Dr. Morse watched the interaction with professional interest. "It's remarkable how he responds to you, almost as if he knows you." Bobby scratched behind Axel's ears, avoiding eye contact. "He probably just smells other dogs on me. I volunteer at a veteran service dog program." But there was something in the way Axel looked at Bobby, a depth of recognition that went beyond the usual animal-human bond, and something in Bobby's careful movements around the dog. The way his fingers occasionally traced the healed stump of Axel's missing leg with a tenderness that spoke of shared pain. "How did he lose the leg?" Bobby asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Dr. Morse consulted her tablet. "The intake forms just say combat injury. Nothing specific." Bobby nodded, his expression distant. "IEDs cause distinctive injuries. The blast pattern, the way the tissue heals. You can always tell." His hand moved unconsciously to his own leg, rubbing at something beneath his jeans, a gesture Dr. Morse had seen countless times in her brother-in-law and other veterans with prosthetics. The pieces suddenly connected in her mind. "You were injured too." Bobby looked up, momentarily startled, then offered a tight smile. "Left leg, below the knee, 5 years ago next month. Afghanistan. Yeah, Helmand Province. Bad day for everyone involved." As Bobby continued his visit with Axel, Dr. Morse pulled Sarah aside in the hallway. "I think there's more to Mr. Patterson's interest than he's letting on," she whispered. The timing of his injury, his knowledge of Axel, the way the dog responds to him. "It can't be coincidence." Sarah frowned. "You think they served together?" "It's possible. Military working dogs form intense bonds with their units, not just their primary handlers. If Axel was present when Bobby was injured, we should ask him directly." Dr. Morse shook her head. "Combat veterans don't always want to discuss their experiences, especially traumatic ones. Let's give him space. He'll tell us if and when he's ready." Inside the kennel, Bobby sat on the floor with Axel leaning against him, the dog's head resting contentedly on his thigh. He spoke in a low voice that didn't carry beyond the chain-link enclosure. "You're getting out of here soon, buddy. I promise. Got a nice house with a big yard. Memory foam dog bed helps with the phantom limb pain. I get those too. You know." Axel looked up at him with complete trust, his amber eyes reflecting a connection that transcended words. "5 more days," Bobby continued, checking his watch. "That's what the doc says. 5 more days of treatment. Then we can start the final adoption process." What Bobby didn't say, couldn't say yet, was how long he'd been searching, how many shelters and military processing facilities he'd contacted over the years, how many dead ends and false hopes. Until finally, A retired sergeant had mentioned a German shepherd with a missing front leg being transferred to a shelter in Phoenix. "We made it this far," Bobby whispered, fingers gently tracing the faded tattoo in Axel's ear. "Just a little longer." Outside the shelter, Tyler Jameson sat in his truck in the parking lot, watching the entrance through red-rimmed eyes. He'd been there for hours, unable to leave, unable to face going home to an empty apartment filled with reminders of Kevin. His brother's dress uniform still hung in the spare bedroom closet, medals gleaming, boots polished to a perfect shine, waiting for a return that would never come. Tyler's phone vibrated with another message from his father. "Where are you? What's going on? Call me." He silenced the phone without responding. How could he explain what he'd done? How far he'd fallen? The shame burned hotter than the Arizona sun beating down on his truck. As he watched, Bobby Patterson emerged from the shelter, walking with the distinctive gait of someone compensating for a prosthetic limb, a detail Tyler had somehow missed before. The man paused at his own vehicle, a well-maintained older Jeep, and looked back at the shelter with an expression Tyler recognized all too well, the face of someone leaving part of themselves behind. In that moment, something shifted in Tyler's understanding. This wasn't just about a dog, or even about Kevin anymore. There was a larger story here, connections he hadn't seen, truth he hadn't been ready to face. He started his truck and pulled out of the parking lot. Decision made. He needed to know the full story, and for that, he needed to find out exactly who Robert Patterson was and what really happened in Helmand Province 5 years ago. The rejection letter arrived by email at 3:17 a.m. Bobby's phone pinged with the notification, jolting him awake from another fitful sleep filled with desert heat and explosive chaos. The message from Sunrise Haven was brief, bureaucratic. "After careful review, we regret to inform you that your application for adoption has been denied due to insufficient documentation and concerns about suitable accommodation for a special needs animal." Bobby read it 3 times, sleep evaporating as anger and disbelief took its place. He'd provided everything they'd asked for: proof of income, veterinary references, photos of his fenced yard, details of his experience with service animals. Sarah had even visited his home personally 2 days earlier, commenting on how well-suited it was for a 3-legged dog single-level ranch, carpet runners over the hardwood floors, custom ramp to the backyard. Something wasn't right. At the earliest acceptable hour, Bobby arrived at Sunrise Haven. The email pulled up on his phone. The weekend receptionist, Emma, greeted him with surprise. "Mr. Patterson? We weren't expecting you today." "I need to speak with Sarah," he said, trying to keep his voice even. "There's been some kind of mistake with my adoption application." Emma's expression shifted to confusion. "That's strange. She personally approved your application yesterday before she left. Said everything looked perfect." Bobby showed her the rejection email. Emma frowned, studying the message. "This doesn't even look like our standard template, and it's from a general admin account, not Sarah's." A cold feeling settled in Bobby's stomach. "Where's Axel? I need to see him." Emma hesitated. "He was moved to the medical wing yesterday afternoon. Dr. Morse found some concerning symptoms during his checkup." Bobby was already moving toward the kennel area, ignoring Emma's protests. The familiar route to Kennel 17 revealed an empty space. Axel's bedding and toys gone. He pivoted toward the medical wing, pushing through the swinging doors with mounting dread. "Doctor—" Morse looked up from her desk, startled by his abrupt entrance. "Mr. Patterson, this is a restricted area." "Where is he?" Bobby demanded, scanning the recovery kennels. "What happened to Axel?" Dr. Morse rose, her expression grave. "He suffered a serious setback yesterday, severe dehydration, possible toxicity. We're running tests, but he's not responding well to treatment. I need to see him. Now." She led him to an isolation room at the back of the medical wing, through the observation window. Bobby saw Axel lying on a padded mat, an IV line running into his front leg. The German shepherd's breathing was shallow, his once alert eyes dull and unfocused. He looked worse than he had when Bobby first saw him, worse even than survivors Bobby had pulled from collapsed buildings and combat zones. "What the hell happened?" Bobby whispered, pressing his palm against the glass. He was improving. Dr. Morse checked the medical chart hanging outside the door. According to this, he refused food and water yesterday, then began vomiting in the afternoon. The blood work shows elevated liver enzymes consistent with toxicity. Toxicity from what? We don't know yet. Could be medication interaction. Could be something environmental. She hesitated, then added quietly, or intentional poisoning. Bobby turned sharply. Who had access to him yesterday? That's the thing, several people. It was a busy day, staff coming and going. Sarah left early for a board meeting. I was handling an emergency surgery, and the new weekend staff were training. Dr. Morse rubbed her temples, and our security cameras were down for scheduled maintenance. Convenient timing, Bobby muttered. What about Tyler Jameson? Could he have gotten in? He's been suspended. His access credentials revoked. That doesn't answer my question. Dr. Morse sighed. The building's not Fort Knox. Mr. Patterson, someone familiar with our operations, could find ways in, especially during shift changes. Bobby stared at Axel through the glass, the dog's condition sending him back to another time, another place, bodies broken by violence, the smell of blood and explosives, the helpless rage of watching comrades suffer. Can I go in? I'm sorry. He's in isolation protocol. We can't risk... Doctor. Bobby interrupted, his voice low and intense. That dog saved my life once. I'm not going to stand here and watch him die behind glass. Either you let me in, or I'm going through this door anyway. Something in his expression must have conveyed his absolute determination. Dr. Morse studied him for a long moment, then nodded. 5 minutes. Wash up first, and wear a gown. Inside the isolation room, the smell of antiseptic and sickness hung in the air. Bobby approached slowly, speaking softly as he knelt beside Axel's mat. Hey, buddy. Rough day, huh? Axel's eyes flickered open at the sound of his voice, but there was no tail wag, no attempt to rise, just a faint recognition in his dulled gaze. Bobby gently stroked the dog's head, careful not to disturb the IV line. Listen to me, he whispered, leaning close to Axel's ear. You've survived worse than this. Taliban ambushes, desert heat. That time we ran out of water near Sangan. His voice caught. You found a way then. Find a way now. Axel's tail thumped once against the mat, a weak acknowledgement, but better than nothing. Bobby continued talking, recounting memories from their shared past, while monitoring the dog's breathing, checking the gums for color, all the battlefield assessment techniques that had become second nature. When Dr. Morse returned to end the visit, she found Bobby sitting cross-legged on the floor, Axel's head resting in his lap, the dog's breathing slightly stronger, more regular. His color's better, she observed, checking Axel's vital signs. That's remarkable. He's a fighter, Bobby said simply. Always has been. Dr. Morse studied him with renewed interest. You know, you never directly answered when we asked if you knew Axel before. Bobby continued stroking the dog's fur, his expression unreadable. Some stories aren't mine alone to tell. Well, whatever your connection, it's clearly helping. His heart rate has stabilized. She made a note on the chart. I can give you another 15 minutes, but then we really need to continue treatment. After she left, Bobby carefully shifted Axel's head back to the mat and stood. I'll be back, buddy. Count on it. In the corridor, Bobby pulled out his phone and made a call. Mark, it's Patterson. I need that favor now. Full background check on Tyler Jameson, Phoenix area. Brother was Army, KIA in Afghanistan about 3 years ago. He listened briefly. Yeah. And I need access to military working dog deployment records from Helmand Province, 2017 to 2020. ASAP. At the front desk, Emma stopped him before he could leave. Mr. Patterson. Sarah just called in. She says she never saw or rejected your adoption application. She's coming in now to straighten things out. Bobby nodded grimly. Tell her I'll be back this afternoon. And Emma, don't tell anyone else I'm coming. No one. Outside in the parking lot. Bobby scanned the area with the habitual vigilance of someone who had learned the hard way that threats could come from any direction. Nothing seemed immediately suspicious, but his instincts, the same instincts that had kept him alive in combat, told him someone was watching. He was right. From a coffee shop across the street, Tyler Jameson observed Bobby's departure through the window, a folder of printed documents spread on the table before him. His overnight research had yielded unexpected connections, painful truths, and one inescapable conclusion: Robert Patterson wasn't just any veteran looking for a companion animal. The pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together, revealing a picture far more complex and damning than Tyler had imagined, a picture that implicated not just himself in Axel's suffering, but potentially others with far more to lose. The shelter storage room smelled of bleach and dried dog food, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across metal shelving units stacked with supplies. Tyler Jameson shouldn't have been there at all. His keycard had been deactivated, his security clearance revoked. But 3 years of employment had taught him the building's vulnerabilities, the service entrance door that never quite latched, the 5-minute gap in the overnight security patrol, the blind spots in the camera coverage. He moved cautiously through the narrow aisles, searching for the logbook that tracked medication dispensation. His research over the past 24 hours had led him down a rabbit hole of military records, news articles, and social media connections that painted a disturbing picture, one that might explain Axel's sudden deterioration after nearly a week of improvement. The sound of voices in the corridor outside froze him in place. Tyler pressed himself against the shelving, listening intently as Sarah Wellington and Dr. Morse passed by. "The blood work is conclusive," Dr. Morse was saying, her voice tight with anger. "Antifreeze poisoning. Someone deliberately gave it to him." "God," Sarah responded, her footsteps pausing just outside the storage room door. "Who would do something like that? Tyler's been gone for days." "That's what concerns me," Dr. Morse replied. "The timing suggests someone else might have access or motive. We need to review all security footage from yesterday." Their voices faded as they continued down the hallway. Tyler exhaled slowly, processing this new information. Antifreeze poisoning, an amateur's method, cruel and unmistakable. Not something a professional would use if they wanted to disguise a deliberate attack. He turned to leave, ready to find Bobby Patterson and share what he'd discovered. When the storage room door swung open, a tall man in a maintenance uniform blocked the exit, his face expressionless beneath the brim of his cap. "Restricted area," the man said flatly. "Staff only." Tyler straightened, mind racing for a plausible explanation. "I'm just grabbing some supplies. Sarah asked me to—" "You're Tyler Jameson," the man interrupted. "You were terminated 3 days ago." Something about the man's posture, the way he balanced his weight. Hands positioned for quick movement, triggered Tyler's instincts. This wasn't regular maintenance staff. "Look, I can explain," Tyler began, backing slowly toward the emergency exit at the rear of the storage room. The man advanced, reaching beneath his uniform jacket. "No need. Your interference ends now." Tyler lunged for the nearest shelf, yanking it toward his pursuer. The metal structure tipped with a screech of protest, sending supplies cascading to the floor, bags of kibble bursting open, cleaning supplies clattering across concrete, medication bottles rolling in all directions. The shelf teetered precariously before gravity claimed it, collapsing toward the maintenance man with inexorable momentum. Tyler didn't wait to see the impact. He sprinted toward the emergency exit, shoving the push bar with his shoulder. The door burst open, alarm blaring as he stumbled into the Arizona sunlight, heart hammering against his ribs. Behind him, a crash and muffled cry confirmed the shelf had found its target. Tyler hesitated, an unexpected impulse stopping his flight. Despite everything, his suspension, his guilt, his fear he couldn't leave someone potentially injured. He turned back, peering cautiously through the open door. The maintenance man lay partially trapped beneath the collapsed shelving, face contorted in pain, hand still reaching for something inside his jacket. Tyler approached warily, keeping distance between them. "Don't move," he warned. "Help is coming." The man's eyes fixed on him with cold hatred. "You have no idea what you've done." Before Tyler could respond, a blur of motion caught his peripheral vision, a tan and black form racing down the corridor toward the storage room. Axel, somehow free from the medical wing, moving with surprising speed despite his weakness and missing limb. The German shepherd burst through the doorway, positioning himself between Tyler and the fallen man. Hackles raised, a low growl rumbling from deep in his chest. It wasn't the confused, traumatized animal Tyler had been tormenting. This was a military working dog in full protection mode, every muscle tense with purpose. "Axel," Tyler whispered, stunned by the dog's unexpected appearance. The maintenance man cursed, finally extracting something from his jacket, a small black object that Tyler recognized with horror as a compact stun gun. As the man aimed it toward Axel, Tyler reacted without thinking, lunging forward to kick the weapon away. The maintenance man's free hand shot out, grabbing Tyler's ankle and yanking hard. Tyler crashed to the floor, his head connecting with the concrete, vision swimming with sudden spots of light and darkness. Through the disorientation, he was vaguely aware of snarling, shouting, the tearing of fabric, then silence, broken only by his own ragged breathing and the distant wail of the emergency alarm. When Tyler's vision cleared, he found Axel standing over the now unconscious maintenance man, blood on the German Shepherd's muzzle, the stun gun lying useless several feet away. The dog's sides heaved with exertion, his legs trembling with the effort of remaining upright, but his posture remained vigilant, protective, protecting Tyler, the same man who had systematically abused him for days. "Why?" Tyler whispered, the single word encompassing a universe of confusion and remorse. Axel turned at the sound of his voice, amber eyes meeting Tyler's with an intelligence that transcended species. There was no hatred there, no vengeance, only the steady resolve of a soldier who had made his choice. The sound of running footsteps in the corridor broke the moment. Dr. Morse appeared in the doorway, followed closely by Sarah and 2 security guards. "What the hell?" Sarah exclaimed, taking in the scene, the collapsed shelving, the unconscious man, Tyler sitting dazed on the floor, Axel standing guard. "He attacked me," Tyler explained, pointing to the maintenance man. Axel stopped him." Dr. Morse rushed to the German Shepherd's side, checking him with professional urgency. He shouldn't even be able to stand, let alone fight. The toxicity levels in his blood, she broke off, noticing the blood on Axel's muzzle. "Is that his blood? Is he injured?" "Not his," Tyler said quietly. "He was protecting me." Sarah gave him a hard look. "What are you doing here?" "Tyler, you're trespassing." "I know," Tyler admitted, struggling to his feet. "I found some connections between this man, Bobby Patterson, and Axel. I think someone's been trying to sabotage the adoption. Maybe worse." One of the security guards knelt beside the unconscious man, checking his pulse. "He's alive. Who is he?" "He's not maintenance staff," Sarah said firmly. "I've never seen him before." Tyler pulled out his phone, hands shaking slightly. "His name is Eric Donovan, former private security contractor. I found his connection to a company called Sentinel Operations while researching Patterson." As the security guard secured Donovan and called police, Dr. Morse focused on Axel, who had finally sunk to the floor, his burst of adrenaline-fueled strength depleted. "We need to get him back to medical immediately," she urged, already preparing a portable stretcher. The exertion could have pushed his system over the edge. Tyler moved toward them, but Sarah blocked his path. "I think you've done enough damage. The police will want to talk to you." "Wait," Tyler pleaded. "There's more. Patterson isn't just some random veteran. He served with Axel in Afghanistan. Same unit, same mission when Axel lost his leg." Sarah's expression hardened. "And you know this how? Military records, news articles. Patterson received a Purple Heart and Bronze Star for the same operation where Axel was injured." Tyler swallowed hard. "The same mission where they lost their handler Sergeant James Miller. Dr. Morse looked up sharply from where she was tending to Axel. Miller? That's the name Axel responds to during his sleep vocalizations. I thought it might be his handler. It was, Tyler confirmed. But there's something else. Miller wasn't just any handler. He was under investigation for weapons trafficking when he died. The official report says he was killed saving his team from an IED, but there were inconsistencies, witnesses with conflicting accounts. Sarah crossed her arms, skepticism evident in her stance. And this connects to Axel and Bobby Patterson. How exactly? Patterson was there. He was one of the witnesses whose testimony cleared Miller posthumously. Tyler ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in his gesture. And this guy, Donovan, he works for the same private security firm that Miller allegedly had connections with. A new voice joined the conversation from the doorway. He's right. They all turned to see Bobby Patterson standing there, his expression grim. Behind him, Emma from reception hovered anxiously. I'm sorry, she said to Sarah. He insisted it was an emergency. And Bobby ignored the apology, his focus entirely on Axel. The German shepherd, despite his weakened state, lifted his head at the sound of Bobby's voice, tail thumping weakly against the floor. What happened? Bobby demanded, moving immediately to kneel beside the dog. Dr. Morse explained quickly the security breach, the attack, Axel's unexpected intervention. We need to get him back to treatment immediately. Bobby nodded, gently stroking Axel's head. You did good, buddy. Stand down now. The German shepherd immediately relaxed, as if the formal release command had freed him from duty. Bobby looked up at Tyler, his expression unreadable. How much do you know? Tyler met his gaze steadily. Enough to understand why someone might want to prevent you from adopting Axel. He's a witness, the only remaining witness who knows what really happened that day. The room fell silent, except for Axel's labored breathing and the distant sound of approaching sirens. Bobby's hand never stopped its gentle rhythm on the dog's fur as he spoke. 5 years ago, our unit was conducting routine patrols near the Pakistan border. Sergeant Miller was Axel's handler, one of the best in the regiment. I was just a lance corporal. Still on my first deployment, Bobby's voice remained measured, but his eyes reflected old pain. We received intelligence about a weapons cache in a compound outside Sangin. Standard mission: clear the area. Secure any contraband, get out. He paused as the security guards returned, reporting that police were 2 minutes out. Sarah waved them away, her attention fixed on Bobby's story. Miller took Axel in first, standard procedure for explosive detection. The dog cleared the main building, but when they reached a back room, something changed. Axel alerted. But not for explosives, he went into protection mode, placing himself between Miller and the rest of us. Bobby's expression darkened with the memory. Turns out, there were no Taliban weapons. It was American equipment missing shipments that had been reported destroyed in combat. Miller had been running a side business, selling military equipment to private contractors. Dr. Morse gently urged them toward the door. We can continue this conversation while moving Axel to treatment. They carefully transferred the German shepherd onto the stretcher, Bobby never breaking physical contact with him as they proceeded down the corridor. When Axel exposed him, Miller panicked. Bobby continued. He tried to create a diversion, planted an explosive device himself, but Axel knew dogs always know when something's wrong. He attacked Miller. something military dogs are trained never to do to their handlers. That's when the device detonated prematurely. They reached the medical wing, where Dr. Morse and her assistant quickly transferred Axel to a treatment table, reattaching monitoring equipment and preparing additional fluids. "Miller died instantly," Bobby said, stepping back to give the medical team room to work. "I lost my leg, 2 other team members were injured, and Axel." His voice caught slightly. "Axel lost his leg, saving us from his own handler." Tyler leaned against the wall, the magnitude of his misjudgment crushing him. But the official report was altered. Bobby finished. Private security contractors had too much at stake. Miller was posthumously cleared, made into a hero. The survivors were pressured to corroborate the story. Most did. "But not you," Sarah surmised. Bobby shook his head. "I filed reports about what really happened. They disappeared from the record. Then I started receiving threats. Eventually, I was given a medical discharge and strongly encouraged to move on with my life." He moved closer to Axel, who was now receiving intravenous treatment. The German Shepherd's eyes remained fixed on Bobby despite his obvious exhaustion. "I tried to find Axel after my discharge, but military working dogs aren't easy to track, especially ones with problematic histories. He'd been classified as aggressive, unsuitable for adoption or continued service because he'd attacked his handler." Dr. Morse looked up from her work. "That's why he was in such poor condition when he arrived. He'd been passed around, probably mistreated by handlers who saw him as defective. And that's why someone poisoned him." Tyler realized. He's evidence. The only living witness who can't be intimidated or bought off. Outside the treatment room, the sound of police officers arriving echoed down the corridor. Sarah squeezed Bobby's shoulder supportively before going to meet them. "We'll need your statements," she said. "Both of you." As she left, Tyler and Bobby found themselves alone with Axel and the focused medical team. An uncomfortable silence stretched between the 2 men. "I'm sorry," Tyler finally said, the words painfully inadequate for the harm he'd caused. You thought he was responsible for your brother's death?" Bobby finished. "I understand grief, Jameson, better than most, but Axel was never your enemy." Tyler nodded, shame burning behind his eyes. "I know that now." Bobby studied him for a long moment, then gestured toward Axel. "He protected you today, after everything you did to him. He still chose to save you. That's who he is." Tyler watched as the German Shepherd's eyes began to drift closed, the medication finally taking effect, even now, at his weakest. There was dignity in the dog's bearing the unfailing loyalty that had defined his service, his suffering, and ultimately, his salvation. "What happens now?" Tyler asked quietly. Bobby's expression hardened. Now we make sure everyone knows the truth. About Miller, about the contractors, about what Axel did, and most importantly, he gently touched the faded unit insignia tattooed in the dog's ear. About what it really means to never leave a brother behind. The morning sun painted Bobby Patterson's living room in shades of amber and gold, dust motes dancing in the light that streamed through open windows. 6 months had passed since the events at Sunrise Haven, 6 months of healing, adjustment, and new beginnings for both man and dog. Axel lay sprawled across a memory foam bed, positioned strategically to catch the morning warmth. At 7 years old, his muzzle now showed distinguished touches of gray, and the scars across his body told stories of battles survived. His missing left front leg no longer defined him. He had adapted completely, moving with fluid grace, whether trotting through Bobby's backyard or accompanying him to the VA hospital where they both volunteered. Bobby watched from the kitchen doorway, coffee mug in hand, taking a moment to appreciate the peaceful scene. After so many years of searching, of fighting bureaucracy and cover-ups, of navigating his own trauma, the simple joy of having Axel home still occasionally overwhelmed him. "Who's ready for breakfast?" he called. Axel's head lifted immediately, ears perked to attention. Despite his comfortable retirement, the German Shepherd maintained the alert responsiveness of his military training. Some habits never faded, for either of them. As Bobby prepared Axel's carefully balanced meal, a mix of premium kibble, fresh protein, and supplements recommended by Dr. Morse, his phone chimed with an incoming text message. He glanced at the screen, a smile spreading across his face. "Guess who's coming to visit today?" he told Axel, who had padded into the kitchen to supervise breakfast preparations. "Sarah and Dr. Morse probably want to check up on us again." Axel's tail wagged at the familiar names. In the months since his adoption, the shelter staff had become regular visitors, their professional interest in his recovery evolving into genuine friendship with both dog and owner. The doorbell rang promptly at 11. Axel raced to the entrance ahead of Bobby, posture alert but welcoming. When Bobby opened the door, Sarah Wellington and Dr. Morse stood on the porch, accompanied by an unexpected third visitor, Tyler Jameson. "Hope you don't mind the extra guest," Sarah said, reading Bobby's momentary hesitation. "Tyler's helping with our new military working dog program. Thought he might learn something from seeing Axel's progress." Bobby stepped back, making room for them to enter. "Of course. Come on in." Tyler hung back, uncertainty evident in his stance, his gaze fixed on Axel, searching for any sign of fear or aggression. Instead, the German Shepherd approached him with calm curiosity, sniffing his hand before moving back to Bobby's side. "He looks amazing," Morse observed, kneeling to examine Axel more closely. "I'd never guess he was at death's door 6 months ago." "Good food, regular exercise, and no one poisoning him," Bobby replied with pointed understatement. "Does wonders for recovery." They settled in the living room, where Bobby had prepared coffee and a plate of store-bought cookies, a bachelor's attempt at hospitality. Dr. Morse immediately launched into professional questions about Axel's diet, activity level, and any lingering health concerns, while Sarah updated Bobby on changes at the shelter. "We've implemented complete overhauls of our security and animal care protocols," she explained. "Background checks on all staff, surveillance upgrades, mandatory 2-person handling for all special needs animals." "And the legal situation?" Bobby asked, glancing toward Tyler. Sarah sighed. "Still ongoing. Donovan's case goes to trial next month. The security company is claiming he was a rogue agent, of course, distancing themselves from everything." "Convenient," Bobby muttered. "The good news," Dr. Morse interjected, "is that your testimony and the evidence recovered from Donovan's phone have reopened the military investigation into Sergeant Miller's operations. Several of his former contacts have already taken plea deals in exchange for information." Tyler, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. They found my brother's name in some of the records. He wasn't involved in the trafficking, just in the wrong place at the wrong time. They think he might have discovered something, become a liability. Bobby met Tyler's gaze. I'm sorry. That can't be easy to hear. Easier than not knowing, Tyler replied quietly. At least now I understand why. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room, broken only when Axel moved to place his head on Tyler's knee, a gesture so unexpected it drew a small gasp from Sarah. Tyler froze, clearly unsure how to respond to the dog's overture. He's forgiven you, Bobby said simply. Military dogs don't hold grudges. They live in the present. Tyler hesitantly raised a hand to stroke Axel's head, the tension in his shoulders gradually easing. I don't deserve it. Probably not, Bobby agreed without rancor. But that's not how forgiveness works. It's not earned, it's given. Dr. Morse watched the interaction with professional interest. This is exactly why we asked Tyler to help with our new program. His experience, both the mistakes and the learning, makes him uniquely qualified to understand these dogs. The Warrior Paws Initiative, Sarah explained, her voice brightening with enthusiasm. We're partnering with the VA to match retired military working dogs with veterans. Tyler's our liaison with the Military Procurement Division. Bobby raised an eyebrow. Quite a career change, Tyler nodded, still gently petting Axel. Turns out destroying something, then trying to rebuild it, teaches you a lot about how it works. And I owe a debt I can never fully repay. You're paying it forward instead, Bobby observed. That counts for something. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Bobby checked his watch and smiled. Right on time. I hope you don't mind I invited someone else to join us. He opened the front door to reveal an older man in his 60s, silver-haired and military straight despite leaning on a cane. The stranger hesitated on the threshold, eyes searching the room until they locked on Axel. The German Shepherd's reaction was instantaneous and profound. He froze, every muscle tense, ears fully erect. Then, with a high-pitched whine unlike anything Bobby had ever heard from him, Axel launched across the room, nearly knocking over a coffee table in his frantic rush to reach the visitor. Miller, Tyler asked in confusion, looking between Bobby and the stranger. James Miller, Sr., Bobby corrected. Sergeant Miller's father. He reached out after the investigation reopened, wanted to meet the dog who served with his son. The elder Miller knelt with difficulty, arms encircling Axel as the German Shepherd pressed against him, whining and trembling with recognition. The resemblance between father and son was striking the same jawline, the same eyes that Axel would have known from countless hours of service together. He remembers the scent, Dr. Morse explained softly to the others. Family members share certain chemical markers in their body odor. To Axel, there's a shadow of his handler there. Miller Sr.'s weathered face crumpled with emotion as he held the dog. You look just like your pictures, he said, voice rough with feeling. Jimmy wrote about you in every letter. Said you were the best partner he ever had. The room fell silent. Bearing witness to a reunion both heartbreaking and healing, Bobby caught Sarah wiping away tears, while Tyler stared at the floor, his own emotions clearly overwhelming him. After a moment, Miller Sr. looked up at Bobby. Thank you for this. When I lost my son, I thought I'd lost everything connected to him. Finding out about the investigation, the things they're saying he did. Your son was human, Bobby said gently. Complex, flawed, capable of both good and bad choices. But to Axel, he was family. That never changed. Miller nodded, understanding the subtle message. That's why I wanted to meet this dog, to know the partner who stood by Jimmy, even at the end. He stroked Axel's fur with trembling hands, and to thank the man who made sure he found his way home. Bobby shook his head. Axel found his own way. I just helped with the last few miles. As the afternoon progressed, the initial tension dissolved into something approaching companionship. They moved to the backyard, where Axel demonstrated his remarkable mobility, racing around the fenced perimeter with surprising speed for a three-legged dog. He helps at the VA 3 days a week now, Bobby explained as they watched Axel play. Therapy sessions with amputees and trauma survivors. Something about seeing him adapt it reaches people when nothing else can. From weapon of war to healer, Dr. Morse mused. Quite a journey. We're not so different, Bobby replied, absently rubbing his prosthetic leg. We all find new purpose, eventually. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard, their visitors prepared to leave. Miller Sr. was the last to say goodbye, kneeling once more to hold Axel close. You take care of each other, he told Bobby, shaking his hand firmly. And if you ever need anything at all, you call me. You're family now, both of you. After everyone had gone, Bobby and Axel sat together on the porch steps, watching the Arizona sky turn crimson and gold. The German shepherd leaned against Bobby's side, a solid, warm presence grounding him in the present moment. Good day, buddy, Bobby asked, scratching behind Axel's ears just the way he liked. Axel looked up at him with clear, intelligent eyes that had seen both the worst and best of humanity. His tail thumped against the wooden step in simple contentment. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell. Two soldiers who had found their way home, carrying their scars with dignity, and more importantly, carrying on. In the distance, a neighbor's wind chime played a gentle melody, and somewhere down the street, children's laughter floated on the evening breeze, ordinary sounds of peace that neither man nor dog took for granted. Bobby's hand rested on Axel's back, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. We made it, he whispered, the words both a statement and a promise. We made it. Ladies and gentlemen, Axel's story speaks to truths we've learned through our own journeys. Like this brave German shepherd, we know what it means to lose parts of ourselves, whether physically, emotionally, or through the passage of time. We understand the sting of betrayal and the weight of being discarded when society deems us less useful. Many of us have watched loved ones return from war forever changed. Or perhaps we returned changed ourselves. Axel's unwavering loyalty, despite mistreatment, mirrors the resilience of our generation, we who weathered economic downturns, witnessed cultural revolutions, and still showed up for duty day